Hey everyone! We're going to be making the side part hairstyle from Animal Crossing New Horizons. One of the first tutorials we created was the Animal Crossing New Horizons main character, so you can follow that, or you can download the base body, the finished hairstyle, and archived versions of the hairstyle to help you follow along from our Patreon, link in the description. It's free as long as you have a Patreon account, which is also free. Alright, let's get to making the side part, or as Animal Crossing calls it, a hairstyle with a mirror. It doesn't have a name. Alright, let's go. Like the video. Before we start making the hair, I'm going to turn off the rig visibility and change my viewport shading settings to be closer to default. Let's get our cursor back to world origin by hitting Shift S and choosing cursor to world origin. It gets moved on accident all the time, and this is where Blender will place newly added objects, so try to keep an eye on it. We plan on making a few hairstyles, so for organization's sake, I'm going to make a new collection over in the outliner by right-clicking and choosing New Collection and then renaming it. I'll call this one Hair 01. Alright, let's add a cube. We want to add in object mode, so click up here and change into object mode. Hit Shift A and select a cube. With the help of a few modifiers, this is eventually going to become our hair. The method I use for modeling involves keeping my geometry relatively low poly and using a subdivision modifier to create smooth, easy to edit objects. By placing vertices and edges closer together, you can create sharper curves, and by having geometry further apart, you'll get more gradual curves. I find this is a really great way to quickly achieve nice looking results. Speaking of modifiers, let's add one already. Click this wrench tab over here, which is the modifier tab. Click Add Modifier and choose the Subdivision Surface modifier. Turn the viewport levels, or as Blender calls it, levels viewport, up to 2. And now magically, our cube is a sphere. Still in object mode, let's grab and move this object up on the Z axis. I'm using orthographic view. You can switch between ortho and perspective with numpad 5 and go into front view with numpad 1. It'll say front orthographic over here if you're in the same view. Right now it's kinda hard to tell where our head is at. So let's change our viewport into wireframe view by clicking this button. Numpad 3 for side view. As a personal preference, I like to turn off optimal display in my subdivision modifiers. Try to position this future hair object somewhere in here. Tab into edit mode, and this is why I love subdivision modifiers. The shape looks like a sphere, but the actual editable geometry is still just a cube, so it's very easy to keep everything shaped nicely. Let's select all with A if it isn't already selected, and scale down with S. Doesn't have to be perfect, but about this size will do. We want it a little bit wider, so scale on the X axis, just a tiny bit. Turn up the viewport display of the subdivision modifier and switch back into solid view. This is a pretty good starting shape for our hair. We might want to go into side view, grab it, and move it back just a tiny bit more. Tabbing into object mode can help get a better look at the overall shape. Right now we're using flat shading, but if we tab back into edit mode, go up into the face menu and choose shade smooth. Now our shape looks smooth. We need more editable geometry, so let's turn down our subdivision modifier levels to 2 and in object mode apply the modifier. This will take our object to make the directly editable geometry match the appearance of the modified geometry. And I love subdivision modifiers, so let's just add another one right away, leave the levels at 1. Select this object and scale it up a little bit to offset the lost volume from the subdividing. And let's move it forward a little bit. Let's temporarily turn off the visibility of our body. In edit mode, get in right orthographic view and switch to wireframe view. Double tap A to deselect everything, and hit C to bring up circle select. Scrolling your mouse wheel will change the circle select size. Change your selection mode to face, and select these faces. Hit X to bring up the delete menu, and choose faces. Switch to solid view and turn the character back on. This particular hairstyle is not all symmetrical, so select this face and delete it as well. The goal being to get our starting geometry pretty close to our desired hairstyle. Don't forget to name your objects. I like to archive versions of objects that I'm working on, sort of like a save file. So in object mode, select and duplicate your object with Shift D, just in case something goes horribly wrong. And then disable the visibility of the original object. Now that we have a good starting point, let's manually position the vertices to shape our hair. Switch to vertex select. Select this vertex, double tap G to edge slide it a little back. Do the same all the way along the back of the hair to shape it. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. When making small changes, edge sliding is pretty convenient. You can also grab and move vertices along individual axes. I moved this one in towards the character's head. By holding shift while selecting, we can grab and move multiple vertices at a time. I moved these 3 back a little bit. Now with a combination of changing views with the numpad keys, edge sliding and grabbing, we can shape our hair. If you want to move a vertex without locking it to an axis, just hit G to grab and move it. While in a numpad view, your depth axis is automatically locked. So from the side, you'll be able to move everything along the Z and Y axis, but not X, which is pretty nice for controlling where all of your geometry ends up. There's no particular order you have to go in, just shape the hair to your liking. Take it one axis at a time if that helps you visualize where you're putting everything. I'm just trying to get the various edges of my hairstyle into their rough positions. I'm currently looking at quite a few reference pictures of this hairstyle in an attempt to closely replicate it. Holding Control while going into a numpad view will give you the reverse view, so Control numpad 3 is left side view. Like on the backside, let's edge slide the front into position. Surprisingly, it's already looking pretty decent as a hairstyle. We can fluff the shape out a bit by moving stuff around. Also, there's a part in the hair that's going into this area, so I'm going to start lining up the edges so that the part kind of falls into the center of them. Just get it kind of close and then we can fine tune it later. Now this side of the hair has its own shape and needs to be fluffed out and smoothed a bit. Nothing too drastic. Move this vertex into the head, and start to create a place for the sideburns to connect. And move this edge to round out the front. Let's add an edge in here with Ctrl R. This will give us a little bit more geometry and allow us to create the part in the hair. I want to try to smooth out this front area a bit, since the shading is looking a little rough. That didn't really fix the shading much, but the shape looks better to me. Alright, let's add the hair part. It can kind of be difficult to get sharp edges when using a subdivision modifier, but with the help of another modifier, we can make this an incredibly easy thing to do. Select these 5 vertices and hit Ctrl E to bring up the edge menu. Choose Mark Sharp, and the edges should turn a light blue. Now in the Modifier tab, add an Edge Split modifier. We only want the edges that are marked as sharp to be split, so uncheck Edge Angle. The modifiers are applied to the geometry in the order that they appear in this list, so how the mesh looks will change based off the modifier order. I had the edge split in the first position for a while, but it's probably best to put it after the subdivision modifier. Now let's move the hair part into position on the head, which I found easiest to start in front view. If we tab into object mode, we can see how the edge split is allowing the crease to exist along this edge. Now let's place the part along the y-axis. I want to add a little more geometry around the edge split. It's easily done with some edge loops, but I don't need a ton of geometry along the back of the hair. So let's switch to face select. Select these 2 faces, hit X and choose to delete only faces. With Ctrl R, add an edge loop on each side of the crease. Hit K to use the knife tool and cut in an edge here. Switch back to vertex select and select these 2 vertices. Hit M and choose merge at last. Select these 2 and do the same. Now select the vertices surrounding this opening and create a face. Do the same here. This is how you add a loop of quads around part of an edge. You can play around with your modifier settings to see what display you prefer the look of. Sometimes I like to disable the subdivision modifiers just to see what the unsubdivided mesh looks like. We've got all this new geometry around the crease in the hair, so let's add some shape to it all. I think I can reduce some of the geometry here. So select these 2 vertices, hit M and choose merge at center. Edge slide is needed. We basically just want to round this part of the hair and smooth everything out. It's going to look significantly less smooth than it did earlier since we can't see our subdivision modifier currently. Tabbing into object mode will show us what our hair looks like with the subdivision modifier active. Tab back and forth as needed to make edits until you like the look of everything. It's time to add a couple more faces down here. There's a few ways we can do this, but the easiest is select these 2 vertices, hit F to make an edge, bring up your search menu with F3 or spacebar or whatever you have it set to, and search for subdivide. This will add another vertex to our new edge, and then we can select and fill in these new faces with F. Now fine-tune the positioning of the new geometry. It's probably a good time to turn back on the subdivision's visibility in edit mode. Now let's try to inflate this side of the hair a bit more by pulling vertices out and up. A lot of the shading issues can be fixed by moving the edge split modifier to the second position, which is where it probably should have gone to originally. I'm pretty happy with how it's coming along. Let's add a curve to the front of the hair so that it doesn't end with this flat edge. Select this vertex and hit E to extrude an edge to about here. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing, so I'm going to try switching into wireframe view. That's not going to help much without some adjusting. So instead, let's go back into solid view and just disable our body object's visibility. Now extrude a bunch of edges out. Try to line them up to be a little to the right of the ones above. and then move them all forward on the y-axis. Try to keep each of these vertex pairs about evenly spaced. The last one can be a little bit closer. Select these 3 vertices and fill in a face with F. Now fill in the rest of the faces. You can't really see it, but I just selected this hidden vertex here and made a face. This is looking pretty good. Way to go, me! This edge looks like something is amiss, and I suspect that there's a double edge causing the issue. You may or may not run into similar weird issues as you're modeling, but it's an easy fix. Just select all with A, hit M and choose Merge by Distance. And that looks like it fixed it, thankfully. I want a little bit more geometry over here, so using the knife tool with K, cut in an edge here. It might feel weird to leave an n-gon here, but this is another benefit to using the subdivision modeling method. Not only does it help you keep your geometry simple to edit while keeping everything smooth, also as a byproduct of how the faces are divided, it turns everything into quads automatically. It's hard to tell currently, but at the end when we apply the final subdivision level, we'll be able to see all of our fancy quads. I'm going to add an edge here, which will change the edge flow of this area slightly. Turn back on the body and let's see how it all looks. Overall I like the shape so far, so now let's start to figure out the sideburns. Tab into edit mode and select these 2 vertices. Hit J to join with an edge. Switch to face select and select this face, hit X to delete and choose faces. Turn off the body object. In front view, extrude in a few edges over here. Move this vertex forward on the y-axis to roughly center it in this space. Select these 3 vertices and make a face. Make a face here, and here. Turn the body back on and check how it looks. Shape everything however you want. I think I want this vertex a little further back. This vertex can be edge slid back a bit and moved out. Keep making all the minor shape adjustments that you want until you're happy with the overall shape. Let's round out the underside of the sideburn area as well. With this vertex selected, go into front view and extrude an edge in. Now move it back just slightly. Fill in this face. Extrude an edge down here and make another face. And this one as well. Check for extra edges or vertices from time to time by selecting all with A, hitting M, and choosing Merge by Distance. Sometimes it can help to turn down the viewport display level of your subdivision modifier to 0. Turn the subdivision back up to 1. Turn the body back on. Remember to save your work frequently, and as always keep adjusting things until you're happy. The back of his hairstyle has some shape to it as well, so let's make that now. Slide these vertices into about where the center of the hair spike thingies go. With these 2 vertices selected, move them back a bit on the y-axis. Edge slide this one up a bit, and then move it back a little as well. We're more or less just flattening out the work area back here. Select these two vertices and scale them in so that they line up with the edges above. Move them down on the Z-axis. And move them back on the Y-axis as well. This object isn't mirrored, but it'll look fine even if you don't get things lined up perfectly, so don't worry about it too much. It might even look better, who knows? Pull this vertex back to about here to create a smooth curve on the back of the head. Now let's add some geometry to work with. With Face Select active, select these faces, hit X to delete, and choose only faces so that the edge in between is left intact. With Ctrl R, add edge loops here and here. Switch back to Vertex Select and fill in these faces with n-gons. If you can't see the location of your vertices, turn the subdivision to 0. Move these two vertices down, scale them out slightly on the x-axis, and move them in towards the head on the y. Grab and move these two vertices up on the z-axis, past the edge above to create this spike shape, and pull them in towards the head. With the subdivision level back at 1, it looks pretty good so far. With Edge Select, select these edges and mark them as sharp with Ctrl E. You can cut in as many edges as you want back here if you want more geometry, but I think this looks good. Let's move on to the sideburns. Select this edge. Duplicate with Shift D, hit P and choose Separate by Selection. This will create a new object out of our edge. Tab into Object Mode and select the new object. I turned off my hair so that it's easier to see the sideburns. Tab into Edit Mode, select this edge and rotate slightly in side view. In top view, rotate a bit to match the angle of the head. Move away from the head just a bit on the x-axis, and up on the z-axis to tuck it into the hair. Edge slide in the vertices to size the edge. Extrude this edge down to about here. Move this back vertex forward to in front of the ear, and in towards the head. Add an edge loop down the middle with Ctrl R. Move everything around to shape the sideburns. If you have to, move the entire shape out to keep it from clipping into the head. I want this sideburn on both sides of the head, so let's add a mirror modifier. If your object origin isn't perfectly centered, your sideburns might not mirror perfectly on the head. If that's the case, either apply the object's location with Ctrl A, or use the body as the mirror object over here. It says I have 8 vertices selected, but I should only have 6, so select all and merge by distance with M. I want to combine the two hair objects into one, so in Object Mode, let's apply our mirror modifier. It's important that we do this before we join them together. Otherwise, the sideburns object will inherit the hair object's modifiers and won't be mirrored. In Object Mode, select the sideburns, and then Shift select the hair, hit Ctrl J to join the objects together. I'm about to apply the subdivision modifier, which is not easy to undo, so I'd recommend creating another archive version of your object before doing so. Just copy the object in Object Mode with Shift D. Now in Object Mode, apply the subdivision modifier. Go into Wireframe View, turn on Snapping to Vertex. Make sure Project onto Self is enabled. Select vertices, grab and snap them onto your hair object's vertices. It's a little hard to see, but select and delete vertices behind the sideburns on the hair, which happens to be these two. Create a face here. On the other side, delete these two vertices. I created some faces, then merged vertices, but you can really connect this sideburn to the hair however you want. Then decided I didn't like that approach as much, and deleted these two faces and these two edges. And then just filled the faces in. Turn off snapping and slide this edge forward one vertex at a time. Now shape the sideburn by moving the middle vertices away from the head. Select all, and under the face menu, shade smooth. On this side, with everything selected, hit M and choose merge by distance. slide the center forward on this side as well, and pull it all away from the head slightly. We just want a little bit of shape to it. Also adjust the position of anything else that seems out of place. I wasn't a fan of how this spot looks on my hair, so I did some adjusting. I'm pretty happy with the shape overall. Now all that's left is capping the inside so there aren't any holes in our mesh. Turn off the body object's visibility, alt-select the entire edge loop. Hold shift while selecting if you need to alt-select multiple parts. Once everything is selected, there's multiple ways to do this interior part. The first is to duplicate this edge with Shift D, extrude the entire edge with E, and merge the extruded edge at center. Position the merged vertex wherever makes sense. Select all and under the face menu, shade smooth. Duplicating the edge initially will help keep the interior separate from the exterior and help keep the shading from being wonky around the edge. But since we have an edge split modifier all set up, we can do this a different way. Select all again and merge by distance. Now the interior and exterior are connected. The shading is weird, but we can just select all the edges we want and mark them as sharp with Ctrl E. Now just fix up any of the hair shape that you want, and it's complete! Feel free to mark more or less of the edges sharp, really however you want at this point. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed. You can get this hairstyle and the base body mesh off of our Patreon for free. If you'd like to help our channel grow, share the video. Subscribe and please like the video, and tell us what sort of videos you'd like to see us do in the future. Thanks again, stay safe, I love you all, goodbye!